Welcome to RCR Wireless Insights. I am Martha DeGrasse, and I am joined today by Brian Hinman. He is CEO of Mimosa Networks. Brian, we're so glad that you could make the time today for this interview.
Well, thanks for having me.
You have a really interesting background. You've successfully started several companies, and now you've turned your attention to wireless backhaul. So if you could start us off with a little bit of information on your background and why you chose to move into wireless backhaul at this time.
Well, specifically, Mimosa is not a wireless backhaul company. We're a wireless company. We're making a range of products to service the wireless internet service provider community. The first product we announced is the B5 backhaul radio, though, and we make both an integrated version with the antenna as well as a connectorized version of that product. So for me, getting into the wireless space was a logical step from the prior company I'd started at, was 2Wire. We were providing DSL access technology, and from our perspective, when we started the company, we viewed that the future of access technology was migrating away from copper-based technologies and towards wireless technologies, and that to be in the ground floor of that transition as it's happening was a very exciting thing to do.
Okay, great. And give us a little bit of specific information about your solution.
So in the first product, again, is the B5 backhaul radio. This radio is using 802.11ac silicon, which is the latest of the Wi-Fi technology. And what we're cleverly doing is reprogramming that chip really from the foundation up to address a point-to-point backhaul application. So we're using the power of the physical layer, which is capable of a PHY rate of 1.7 gigabits per second. And we're reprogramming that chip to make it into a backhaul radio so that we can move large amounts of data over very long distances. One of the great things about the 5 gigahertz band, which is again the Wi-Fi spectrum that this chip is targeted toward, is at 5 gigahertz in an outdoor environment. In fact, you can send very, very long distances. We have links now that are 100 kilometers long. So it's pretty exciting to be able to use low-cost silicon and retarget that silicon towards these outdoor applications, and to get a much higher value out of it than you would imagine in a normal sort of indoor consumer application.
Can you talk at all about which silicon vendors you're working with?
Sure. We're partnered with Quantenna Communication. They're in Fremont here, so relatively local, and been a phenomenal partner for us. We've been working with them in a joint development fashion, developing code where some of the things that we do, we give back to them, and so it's been a pretty close relationship and a very exciting opportunity, I think, for both of our companies.
Now, I noticed with one of your first product announcements that you were very upfront about your price point. I think it was below $1,000, and you talked about competing with fiber. Can you give us a little more information on that, and specifically how this is going to keep the cost low for operators, in your opinion?
So the typical wireless internet service provider, well, today many of them are in rural areas and may only be using a few hundred megabits per second. But as this market is evolving and is moving in towards the suburban areas, higher density, what they need to do is be able to scale their network up to the next level, which is to a gigabit per second, where they're buying a gigabit per second of capacity. And that's typically going to be terminated in fiber. And it may be at a data center, but it may be at some other location out in the field where they're able to buy a gigabit. And so where fiber ends off is where we begin. And so from that point, you would put up the B5 backhaul radio, for example, and then be able to shoot out into the community to another location where, for example, you put up an access point, and then from that point it would be point to multi-point to a range of homes and businesses that would be in that area. So what we're really developing here is a hierarchical wireless architecture where it's fiber as far as fiber is economically viable, but then switching over to wireless for the last leg of the journey.
Okay, great. And do you see yourself competing successfully with some of the bigger players in this space? I know that some of the big infrastructure companies are looking at very similar goals. I don't know what their technology is, but their goals are similar.
Well, in the wireless internet service provider space, there's sort of a unique set of companies playing in that space. It's companies like Ubiquity, Cambium, and Microtik. Those three vendors in particular today represent about 70% of all the equipment that's being sold. And the vendors have a variety of different products. Some of them are stronger in switches than in radios, but those three companies represent a large fraction of the infrastructure that's been put in fixed wireless worldwide today.
Okay, good. And do you have any customer wins yet that you can talk about?
None specifically. So we are selling the product through the distribution channels that the WISP buy their things through. So unlike perhaps some enterprise type of products where you go through a VAR channel, a large fraction of what's sold in space is sold through online retailers. So the distribution we've set up is sort of catering to that existing model of how the service providers buy.
Okay, great. Brian Hinman, Mimosa Networks. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us before we finish?
Well, I think we're going to have a very exciting time ahead of us here. We just recently introduced our point-to-multipoint products. So as a company, as time goes by, it'll be apparent that we're doing a range of different things. Backhaul is certainly an important part of the equation, but we're also doing access point products. We're doing client radios. It'll be a broad range of products that we're delivering, again, catering to the needs of the wireless internet service providers.
Okay, great. Well, we hope that you will keep us posted. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.